believe, and I think a lot of people see, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, that we are becoming more and more polarized as a country. And we are not only political polarization, but even like relational polarization. People from different political parties or different political viewpoints are not interacting in social settings as much, not, getting married to one another. There's a strong separation that's happening in this country. And so I was trying to think about ways that we could get more individuals invested in our common goal as Americans. And so that's where I looked at how can we expand national service, civilian service more specifically. And then the second thing I was looking at was that a lot of young people I know are feeling very dire about the future, not just from a polarization standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. And that I know many young people feel like the housing market is not going to be available to them to buy a home. College is becoming more and more expensive. Many of them are not seeing the value in that. And so how do we invest in our future generations and also start to bring them together to fix some of this polarization? And so that's where the proposal essentially is for a version of the GI Bill, very similar in that it would expand incentives for young adults to sign up for civilian service. When I was a team leader, we had a project in Portland, Maine, working with Habitat for Humanity up there. And our project sponsor, this great guy, Chad, who worked with us, showed us what to do and everything. I remember he said why he kept coming back to the work was he said, you'll never kind of guess or believe the conversations you have with someone else when you're sitting on the top of a roof, hammering in shingles. He's like, the conversations I've had with strangers who I've worked with that day have been so deep and extensive and wide-ranging just through that service experience. And that's always kind of connected with me, like those interactions you have with folks on the ground in those service experiences. Yep. So a switch kind of flipped after a few years as a unit leader. And I saw the great impact of direct service, the great impact of programs like AmeriCorps. But when you are, even nonprofits have to deal with it as well. There's a certain amount that you are constrained by the laws and regulations as written. And I started to look at some of the limitations we saw in the project work we were doing. And I listened to one of your previous guests who talked about planting 125 trees, but what if you come back 6 months later and 75 of those are dead? What impact are you really making? And some of that I feel like was built around how laws, regulations are written. And so I started to see that I wanted to make a larger impact and be able to change some of those systems. And so that's where I transitioned and applied to law school.
We are back with another AmeriCorps Connections podcast. I'm telling you, these guests just get more intriguing and more intriguing over time. I hope everybody's enjoying it. Oh, before we get started, I've noticed when I do the analytics for YouTube that if you're watching this on YouTube, that 60% of you that watch don't subscribe. And surprisingly, if you do subscribe, it bumps up the video in its analytics and it'll get the stories on more people's pages. And we need to get these stories out more than ever. People need to hear stories of service. So if you are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, just hit the subscribe. It's free. So anyways, we're here on AmeriCorps Connections. If this is the first time you've landed on this page, I interview AmeriCorps alums. I am an AmeriCorps alum. I went through Volunteer Maryland, and after that service year, it really changed the trajectory of my career, my past, my personal values. And there's 1.3 million AmeriCorps alum out there who have gone through service. So I am just trying my best to just talk to as many as I can. And I think this might be episode like 76 or 77. So we are turning into So without any further ado, let me introduce my next guest, Griff Ryan Roberts, who is an NCCC alum, 2 years, 1 year as a core member and then as a leader. So Griff, why don't you jump into your service story and let's go for a ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And first off, just thank you for hosting me, Nikki, and just really appreciate the work you're doing. I think this is tremendous, getting stories of service out for everybody to hear. Going back to square one, I think my story in some respect lines up with a lot of people of my generation that I've talked to, which is, so I was in undergrad from 2005 to 2009, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I got to school, I ended up majoring in film simply because I just liked watching movies, and I was like, oh, I can take classes and get a major in this, cool. And so I did that. I ended up interning at a couple of film production companies down in Hollywood in one of the summer in my years, and really enjoyed the work. Thought it was really cool, but just kind of felt like something was missing a little bit. Just felt like it wasn't fulfilling me the way I thought it might. And so at that point, by the time I was trying to figure out what my next steps were going to be after I graduate, we get hit with the Great Recession, and basically everybody is telling us there aren't any jobs out there for you. It's very dire. And so didn't really know what to do. All I did know is that I really liked undergrad, but I found at times I felt like we were just talking a lot about it, about a lot of issues. And I was like, what are we all doing here sitting in this room? I had this feeling like I needed to do something. So the only thing I really knew about, and especially because we had a recruiter on campus, was Peace Corps. I'd heard about Peace Corps before. So I was like, cool, I'll just go talk to the recruiter. Recruiter says, due to the Great Recession, so many people are applying to Peace Corps. And so really, we don't need film majors. You know, we need public health, we need environmental studies, other things like that. But she was like, I'm just going to be honest with you, it's very competitive right now, and your degree is not one that we'd be looking for. So I was kind of like, okay, that's a little discouraging. But I just started going online and searching for things, and found this program called AmeriCorps that I had never heard of before, had no idea, and specifically found a program under AmeriCorps NCCC, or National Civilian Community Corps. Saw that it was only for 18 to 25-year-olds. So I kind of thought, well, I'm that age group, so I guess maybe let me try this one because I will age out of it eventually. Mind you, I saw on there that they had a Sacramento campus. I'm born and raised in Sacramento, and I actually find out later in my life. I grew up like 15 minutes from the campus. I had no idea AmeriCorps existed, anything.
Isn't that wild how I just think AmeriCorps is unfortunately the best kept secret.
Really?
And we don't even know the possibilities. Like, I didn't even know I was doing an AmeriCorps year until they handed me this fluffy little sweatshirt. And I was like, well, this is such a cute little, like, hey, I love this. Wait, I'm part of this big thing. What's this big thing? So that's so funny that you literally live down the street from this place.
Yes.
That's crazy.
I know. I couldn't believe it. And so, so I applied to start, I think it was like the January of the next year after I would have graduated college. I heard from other folks at the time, I got waitlisted like a lot of other people did. And so I forgot about it, to be honest. Graduated college, moved back home. I was selling iPhones at an Apple store, just like whatever. And then it was October of 2009. I was getting ready to go into my shift, and I get a phone call, and they're like, hey, we're so-and-so from AmeriCorps in Vinton, Iowa, which never heard of Vinton, Iowa before. And they're like, we had a couple of people no-show for our incoming NCCC class. Would you still like to participate? And if so, can you be here in 3 days? And I was like, oh, can I call you back? And so I kind of thought about it for a couple hours and was like, what should I do? I was selling iPhones, but I was doing all right. I was kind of like getting settled in. And then I was like, I'm going to have so many more regrets in my life if I don't say yes to this. And so I just said, screw it. Yes. And so went in that day, quit my job, sold all my stuff. And then I was on a plane for Vinton, Iowa that weekend. And I'm from Sacramento, California. It's not a booming metropolis. We're not San Francisco. We're not LA, but we're a decent sized city. So flying into cornfields and was quite culture shock for me. But as soon as I got there, I just had this feeling that this is where I was supposed to be. It was one of those situations where I've only had a few things in life where you feel like you're bad at it and you enjoy it. Sometimes I was good at math as a kid, but I was hated math. And so finding this kind of thing where I was like, wow, I feel fulfilled and great, and I'm doing well at this, and totally hooked me. I drank the Kool-Aid since that point.
I'm always so impressed. Many of the conversations that I've had with people who are alums, they have intentionally followed the path or seeked out a service year and have used it intentionally. Gia was somebody that stood out for me where she did NCCC, so boots on the ground doing the work. And then she wanted to see what a VISTA year would be like, where VISTA is behind the scenes and capacity building. How were you so insightful at like 22? You were like, I'm going to have so many more regrets. I think that I'm going to do this. I don't know. I think as a young person, that's can be rare, because I think as young people, we're in the present moment, and to think about ourselves down the road is something that's challenging to do. It's even challenging to do with us seasoned folks.
Yeah.
Lightly sauteed folks. It's neat to be here now where you can reflect on the decisions. I always like to say I love it when my past self protects my future self.
Absolutely.
I'll get calendar alerts where it's a link, focus on this because the due date is this day. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I've linked everything there, so I don't have to go searching for it. So I just wanted to put a little pin on kudos to you for being so insightful with your decision making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it was truly, like I said, just a tremendous experience. We got that point. So this would have been fall 2009. And so even though we were based out of the Iowa campus, AmeriCorps NCCC across the country was still doing recovery efforts in the Gulf post Katrina and the storms from 2005. So we got projects not only based in kind of the Midwest Iowa area, but also went down to Louisiana and we're rebuilding homes down there, which, again, I had really grown up in Sacramento, went to school in Santa Cruz, California, which is a little beach community south of San Francisco, been around the country a little bit here and there, but, I had never experienced the Midwest. I had never experienced the South. And so just getting that exposure was so tremendous and really started to get me feeling like.
That is such a good point. And I actually never heard it explained in that way. And I mean, that's why people say travel, right? Like, get out of your neighborhood, get out of your community, get out of your comfort zone. Kate Morton, I always go back to her. She's like, she did NCCC and her comfort zone was here. And then she had to do a project and her comfort zone was here. So she had to push herself to here. And it was like this, oh, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. But I think that that's such a good reflection of I'm going to have to quote you on that. I'm getting that idea of what this America is. That is, and you can't experience that without being in the community.
Correct.
You can see pictures on TV, you can listen to stories, but to be in the community and to serve the people and to serve alongside people it just hits different.
Absolutely. This always stands out to me. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead in kind of my storyline, but when I was a team leader, we had a project in Portland, Maine, working with Habitat for Humanity up there. And our project sponsor, this great guy, Chad, who worked with us, showed us what to do and everything. I remember he said why he kept coming back to the work was he said, you'll never kind of guess or believe the conversations you have with someone else when you're sitting on the top of a roof, hammering in shingles. He's like, the conversations I've had with strangers who I worked with that day have been so deep and extensive and wide ranging just through that service experience. And that's always kind of connected with me, like those interactions you have with folks on the ground in those service experiences. I've met people from all walks of life. And even if it was just a day of working together, we made this like very strong connection. And so I think that's kind of where, national service, community service really plays a huge impact in developing those bonds with others.
So this term has come up so many times over the last couple of weeks for me. We're recording this in like mid-March. Mirror neurons. Have you ever heard of mirror neurons?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I think they're neurons in our brains, which humans have to connect with each other. And it provides us the ability to have empathy, to actually feel like what somebody's going through. And I think what you're explaining is when you're sitting on a roof with somebody and you're working on the same project, you're experiencing the same heat, you have the same sort of time frame of working on this project. So apparently these mirror neurons like looking in a mirror each other, and that's what helps us connect with each other and be able to share these stories. And that's why service and volunteerism can be so transformational, because you're starting to hear and feel other people's basically like energy, right? Like
Yeah.
we're going to have a spin-off on this podcast, the esoteric thoughts of Nikki Fiacco. But I think you put it so lovely. You never know how many conversations you're going to have when you're just nailing in roofs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So clearly I got hooked as a core member after that, as is the step for a lot of folks who really connect with NCCC. Coming back to do a team leader year is what I did next. I really wanted to, even though I had a wonderful experience out at the Vinton campus, the staff out there were great. I did want to keep in the theme of expanding my horizons. So I applied to serve at what is no longer in existence. It was the Perry Point, Maryland campus, which was really cool, right on the Chesapeake Bay, old VA housing. And so again, I had been like on my middle school DC trip, but that was really the extent of like my East Coast kind of travel experience. So it was really cool. I got to come back, do it again, but this time leading a team, which I just have to say, probably the most impactful experience I've had in my life is the year as a team leader. And it's both amazing and at times a little scary how much responsibility we put in these AmeriCorps NCCC team leaders, which is great. I think it's really great. It showed who I was as a person, what I stood for, because not only are you working day in and day out, long hours, doing service projects, but then you are in charge of 8 to 10 other young adults who are always looking to you for answers. And it makes you really grow up quickly, get a sense of yourself quickly, because it's not even in my professional career as I've gotten older now, I've been a manager, but it's 5 disputes with the people I manage, even if they're really tough, I get to go home at the end of the day and do as much as I can to not think about them anymore. You don't get to do that. And so if you got a dispute with someone, if you're having troubles, it's like, you're working with them, you're eating dinner with them, you're seeing them later at the housing. I mean, so you got to learn how to handle it. And that, I think, really set me up for success throughout the rest of my career.
Yeah. And for folks that are just like, what is he talking about? Why is he living with people that he's working with? So NCCC, National Civilian Community Corps, are groups of about 10 to 15 young folks who travel around a region of the country, and they live and work together 24/7. So organizations can request a team to come in and do work from Habitat for Humanity, building houses. They could also be preparing taxes. They could also be tutoring students. There's an array of projects that NCCC members do. And the requirement for the organization to host NCCC is to have a place for them to stay. So sometimes these folks, and I love to hear I always love to hear, where did you stay? Some of these folks might sleep on a basement floor, like in a church or in a school gym or something like that. A lot of times I think the housing, it has to have a bathroom and shower and stuff like that. And I think maybe a kitchen. But so just to get this concept, these folks come together, they shop together, they cook together, they hang out in the evenings together, and then they get up and they serve together. So I can imagine they're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna have to talk to the NCCC people about this. We can make money off of NCCC. Realities though.
It truly, like, we have been preaching that for them today, because it is, I mean, I know I'm aging myself a little bit here, but it truly is like real world meets like service, and so you have drama and different stuff. You just don't have the confessional, but I'm sure they could set that up. I mean, it's something else. It was, jumping to your talking about like all the different places we stayed. A lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of church basements. They were great hosts. We stayed in some really great places. One, I remember down in Louisiana, it was really great facility. Can't thank them enough. We found out that our wall where we were staying butted up to the back of the organ. So we really didn't get to sleep in on Sundays because all of a sudden you would hear stuff like that. You run into and you realize, oh, okay, we're gonna have to roll with that. And so and myself, I have a couple older half siblings, but I didn't grow up in the same house with them. I basically grew up as an only child, and now I'm living with 9 other people. A lot of places we had like one bathroom, and so like we're having it's like shower schedules. You got to be like 5-10 minutes tops. If you're not, somebody's banging on the door. Just all the coordination and everything. It's really helpful life skills, but just also being able to roll with the ups and downs of what you're going to encounter in your future. I feel like because of that living experience, most situations I encounter in a professional experience, I'm like, it's not that big a deal.
Fine. Yeah.
Like we'll get through it. So yeah,
That
it's
so
it's
much
great.
anxiety to be like in a place with 9 people in one bathroom. I'd be like, I'm gonna go down to 7-Eleven.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have to shout out to one of my former Corps members, Darren, who always took like 30-minute showers, and we would always just be on him so much. Yeah, so you just so we had to schedule Darren. He had the like last shift basically in the shower schedule.
Funny.
But yeah, we lived in all kinds throughout my 2 years of NCCC. We, as you're mentioning, NCCC does such a variety of work and projects. I talked about rebuilding homes from Katrina. We worked with the Army Corps of Engineers in Iowa doing like timber stand improvements. So we were basically chainsawing down trees to prevent from wildfires out there. We did this big event in DC called Servathon, where we basically helped to support like 75 service events on one weekend throughout the DC area, which was really great. We actually got to stay in a church that was right next to the Capitol Mall. So we could just walk out our front door and be there. So that was really cool. The unfortunate thing about that is I found out the hard way that you cannot drive a U-Haul truck too close to the White House. Because we're delivering supplies all over DC. And again, I've been to DC as a kid just to tour, but I didn't know how it operates. And we were just plugged in GPS. This is how we need to get to our next spot. And we're on the road and we're driving a big U-Haul delivering supplies. And then we see signs that say like no trucks. And we're like, uh-oh, but we're in traffic at that point and just cannot go anywhere. And then all of a sudden, I don't know if it was Secret Service. It was not regular police, but they roll up on us and have us pull over and get out and search the vehicle. And it was like, I'm sorry, we're just service members. But lots of stuff like that, just wide ranges of experiences, being able to perform service in a variety of ways. And I think that's what makes that program so great. A lot of people may be looking to do national service and have a really set idea of what they want to do. And I think that's wonderful. You can really target. For me and a lot of other people who go through NCCC, you just kind of have that feeling like you want to help, but you don't really know what to do. And so NCCC gives you the buffet experience. Oh, this is what environmental conservation work looks like. This is what infrastructure rebuilding homes work looks like. This is what tutoring in schools might look like. And so then that way you can go, oh, okay, I have so much respect for people who do the invasive species removal, environmental work, but I found out that is not my jam. Yeah, but it was great. I spent a couple months of doing it. And so I got a feel for it and could then know that's not the route I'm taking. And so that's where I think that experience is so powerful for folks to not figure out what they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that just from interviewing so many NCCC members, that so many of them say that from their service year really led them to Dana Benjamin from, look, Dana, I'm using your cup again, from, what are you called again? Back of the napkin. She was an NCCC member. They were planting trees and it was for salmon. And they had to report on how many trees and the salmon and this and that. And she came up with this really fun way of reporting, which was like 1 fish, 2 fish, red fish, blue fish. Yep. And it was fun. And now she has a company, which is Back of the Napkin, that does data analysis. And
that's awesome.
She took that and channeled it. Kate Morton, again, sorry, Kate, I exploit your story all the time. She was serving in New Mexico on a reservation, building a Boys and Girls Club. And she realized the health disparity between folks. Like, they had to travel so far to get to hospitals. So she went into pharmaceutical and she opened her own trial clinic or something. So she's like helping folks that don't have access to healthcare directly because of her service. And that's why this podcast exists, because these stories need to be told.
That's it.
Let's wrap up your service year, because I know you have so many cool things and exciting things that you've been working on. I want everybody to be able to hear those stories. What else should we know about your service, and how did it direct you?
Well, so NCCC were my first 2 years, and I actually was one of those folks that you had mentioned. I did a year of VISTA as well. So I knew I wanted to work for AmeriCorps after I was out of NCCC, but I also knew that NCCC was a small sliver of AmeriCorps. And so I wanted to see what else was out there. Also, VISTA at that time, got the cash payment because I couldn't get another education award, and the non-competitive eligibility, which allowed for easier hiring. So I did a year of VISTA with the California Conservation Corps, which is really great. So I could see the core structure comparatively from state side versus federal side. And so I spent a year in Watsonville, which is down in the Monterey Bay area, kind of going back to where I was in college and working with them, helping to develop their curriculum for their core members, life skills, stuff like that. And then also locating partnerships within the community that could provide support to the core members. It was a really great experience. I will just say it is like night and day from NCCC, and was a bit of a shock because NCCC is like the equivalent of the infantry of AmeriCorps. It's militaristic, and it's like you wake up, you got to do your physical exercise. Your schedule is pretty filled for you. Even when you're a team leader, you know what you have to do and you make the schedule and all that. Then getting to VISTA, and it was like you go through your VISTA training and they give you, here's this package of what they want you to get done. And then they're like, and you have a year, go. And it's all, I went through such a like weird experience of switching. It really took me a few months to get myself in that mindset of me, and there's not a team around me. Obviously, I'm working with my sponsoring organization and great staff there, but my deliverables are just on me, and it's more of the indirect service. So it's not that hammering in nails, picking up trash. It's, what can I do to make my impact sustainable after my service term is over? So I really loved getting that perspective, because I really feel like it helps me to understand the two sides of the coin when it comes to service, and how one is not better than the other, but they both have an important need. And so I think that was really helpful, because I think in a lot of ways, VISTA is more, from folks I know who have done Peace Corps, VISTA is more the kind of domestic version of Peace Corps, very similar in that respect. And it's cool to think about, here's what we did in NCCC, here's how we made an impact, but thinking behind the scenes as the VISTA, what would it look like to not have the need for NCCC to be there in that community? Like, how do you work yourself out of a job? Which I think is what a lot of people, is the ultimate goal. We wish we didn't have to provide this support like that, but so many communities across the country need that support. So I think it was fascinating to get that perspective.
Yeah, I think going from NCCC to VISTA is quite a shock. And again, the folks that are just tuning in, VISTA precludes, is that the right word? Precludes AmeriCorps. It was founded in, I think, the 1965. And it's really focusing on alleviating poverty. And VISTA, basically a sponsor site, applies for a 3-year grant with the regional office or something like that. And so the first year is like the VISTA member comes in and assesses the project and lays out the landscape of how are we going to tackle this project. And then the second and third year is really about implementation, and then sustainability, which is what you were talking about. Okay, sustainability, how can we do this without a VISTA, without an NCCC team? But it's a lot of behind the scenes work, right? And with our culture being so action oriented, like if you're not doing something, if you're not going somewhere, then you're really not doing anything. I think VISTA is really that thing that can help people step back and think about the tasks that need to happen. It's the tip of the iceberg, right? It's all the things that are underneath the tip of the iceberg, where people are like, oh, it's an iceberg, but it took so long for that iceberg to breach the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. It was thinking about that. I'm so thankful to my site supervisor, Rocky, who works for the California Conservation Corps oversight. But he gave me great advice because I was very much in that just like task oriented mindset. What do I need to get done? What do I need to get done? And he just told me, he's like, 'cause I was familiar with the area, but Watsonville directly where I was not really involved very much. And he said, look, I don't really want you to have anything, a deliverable for the first few months. I just want you to show up. So he had me attending community meetings, all these various advocacy, just everything I could get involved with and just be present and listen was what he wanted. And I can't thank him enough for that advice because it took pressure off me because I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. And so when he says, it's okay, you don't have to have an idea, I was like, great. And then also just being there and showing up to a community to listen what they need, not drop in and say, hey, I'm from outside and here's how you should do things. But no, stepping back first and saying, what do they need? What are they talking about? And then where can I start to find my lane in that way?
Yeah, on my 9 to 5, I supervise a VISTA member. And that's whenever I fill out it's called a VAD. I don't know what it stands for, but position description.
Yeah.
I always say for the first 3 months, you're just going to attend. You're going to learn our tools, learn how we communicate, attend everything you possibly can. This is the second year that I've supervised a VISTA member. And it's really cool because each time I can see those first couple of months where they're like, what is happening? And then all of a sudden it's like, click, click, click.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
our check-ins are like, well, I'm working on this and I'm doing this and blah, 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 and they just take off. So what was your culminating project that you were doing with your VISTA project?
So it was really two things. I established 2 partnerships, like formal written agreements with organizations in the area. And then I developed actual curriculum that I taught to the core members and then had the curriculum, lesson plans, everything there so that future staff members who else could carry it on. So that was really great. Got me into thinking like, okay, how can I help in core member development? I had such a positive, strong experience. So how can I make that great for core members moving forward, no matter what the program is? And so I was successful in my goal in that the non-competitive eligibility got me a job with AmeriCorps NCCC as a staff member in my hometown of Sacramento, which I just have to say, if you had told 17-year-old me when I was graduating high school that I would be coming back to Sacramento, I would have been told to get lost, but it's weird how life takes you in different turns. So I worked for AmeriCorps as a federal employee and just truly loved the experience, loved the core lifestyle just of having a bunch of new young adults who are super excited to change the world and get things done and being able to support them in that. I spent a little time in like operations, stuff like that, but then got what was my dream position of being a unit leader. So a unit leader in the NCCC structure is the staff member who oversees the service members who go out into the field. So the team leaders report directly to the unit leader.
Mm-hmm.
My unit leader, shout out Jen Horan, was one of the best bosses I've ever had. And she made such an impact on me that I wanted to really kind of follow in her footsteps and do that. That was like, when I was a team leader and saw her being a unit leader, I was like, I want to be that. And so I was able to do that. And it was really just an amazing experience to be able to coach and mentor young adult team leaders. Obviously, I interacted with the core members, but your job is really to support the team leaders. And so I was able to do that for a few years and had some truly phenomenal team leaders, folks I'm still good friends with, folks who themselves went on to become staff members for AmeriCorps and keep the legacy going. And so it was just an incredible experience to spend those few years being able to do that.
That's so exciting. And I didn't know about that position within NCCC. So it's good to know that the leaders do have somebody that they do.
Yeah. As alone as they are out there, they do have a support system. And I just have to share, I was fairly young in the role, and like young people do, you just model what you see. And so like a lot of the fellow unit leaders were former military. We had a lot of former military in NCCC. I think just the structure of it is conducive for that environment. And they were great. I learned so much from them. I modeled my young self after them and then found out that wasn't really my style and figured out my own groove, which is, I think, kind of how most people go through that. And one thing I figured out is I thought I had to have all the answers for my team leaders out in the field. I thought I had to, when they call and there's a problem, so-and-so's been in an argument or our project is kind of not going as we had hoped and whatever, trying to solve these things. I always thought I had to have all the answers. And I quickly learned that honestly, the most important thing you can do is just to say, hey, I'm here with you in this and we are going to figure it out together, even if I have no idea what we're going to do next. And that is what I've tried to carry with me throughout any kind of in future management, parenting, anything like that. That's really what I try to keep in the back of my head.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I think that's what we want as humans is
Yeah.
see me, hear me, be there for me. I rage against the machine when people come to me with, this is how we should do it. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just another story about how we can be captured by service and there's opportunities, right? But this network is very strong and this network in your experience can bring you to amazing opportunities, which let's roll into what you just do. Oh, I also want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about your white paper and all the things that you've been doing in law school.
Yep. So a switch kind of flipped after a few years as a unit leader. And I saw the great impact of direct service, the great impact of programs like AmeriCorps. But when you are, well, any even nonprofits have to deal with it as well. There's a certain amount that you are constrained by the laws and regulations as written. And I started to look at some of the limitations we saw in the project work we were doing. And I listened to one of your previous guests who talked about planting 125 trees, but what if you come back 6 months later and 75 of those are dead? What impact are you really making? And some of that I feel like was built around how laws, regulations are written. And so I started to see that I wanted to make a larger impact and be able to change some of those systems. And so that's where I transitioned and applied to law school. And I'm actually in my final semester finishing up at McGeorge here in Sacramento, where I've really been trying to focus on law, regulation, and policy, and specifically been doing a lot of work around national service. So I was kind of like, well, I want to fix a lot of things. What do I start with? And I was like, well, what do you know, national service? So let's start there. So I've had some really great opportunities, been able to develop my skills. And just recently, I'm a member of the law review board and was able to put forward a law review comment or article, basically proposing for a 21st century version of the GI Bill, but that would be focused on civilian service. So programs like AmeriCorps, Teach for America, all the gamut of all the kind of civilian service programs we have here. And it's been really great to really spend time investing in that and seeing where we can go next with national service. So essentially what I did is I took a look at two things. One, I would say first and foremost, I believe, and I think a lot of people see, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, that we are becoming more and more polarized as a country. And we are not only political polarization, but even like relational polarization. So people from different political parties or different political viewpoints are not interacting in social settings as much, not, getting married to one another. There's a strong separation that's happening in this country. And so I was trying to think about ways that we could get more individuals invested in our common goals as Americans. And so that's where I looked at how can we expand national service, civilian service more specifically. And then the second thing I was looking at was that a lot of young people I know are feeling very dire about the future, not just from a polarization standpoint, but from an economic standpoint. And that I know many young people feel like the housing market is not going to be available to them to buy a home. College is becoming more and more expensive. Many of them are not seeing the value in that. And so how do we invest in our future generations and also start to bring them together to fix some of this polarization? And so that's where the proposal essentially is for a version of the GI Bill, very similar in that it would expand incentives for young adults to sign up for civilian service so that they could receive more of an enhanced education award. But if they didn't want to pursue higher education, they could have access to low or no interest home loans. They would have federal hiring preferences beyond just non-competitive, but similar to like veterans preferences. So I tried to really model it after the GI Bill of the 40s.
That is so impressive and so thoughtful, right? Okay, where am I? What questions do I have about this?
Sure.
Let's just name a few. Talk to us about what that looks like, and is it feasible, and what would it look like to, do it a little different?
No. This is, and so I will say from the jump, do I think this is feasible and would pass Congress right now? 100% absolutely not. This would not. But what I believe is that just like the Great Depression, when a country is in crisis, it is going to look for ideas that may seem a little more extreme or may seem like, well, we thought we couldn't do that before, but maybe let's swing for the fences. And so in my mind, this is a kind of proposal that maybe it's a situation where the country, potentially Congress, looks like we need to do something extreme to try and fix this problem. I don't know that I would bet that's going to happen. I think polarization is somewhat similar to climate change in that it's something that a lot of people are recognizing is out there, but don't know necessarily how we take collective action to fix it. And so I think that's where I see things. But I will say, so going back, the GI Bill, although it's not directly a part of what's considered like the New Deal, it really stemmed out of that. It came from the fact of the country went through this Great Depression. We had these, at that time, young men going off to World War II, and they wanted to avert a crisis of having these millions of men coming back to the US and entering the job economy and then pushing everything right back into a depression. So they thought of these ways to, how can we provide opportunities for them to not just immediately jump back into jobs that maybe other people had taken over, or what can we do to expand our economy right now at this point when they did have a little momentum because of World War II. And so that's where a lot of this stuff is built on. So looking at, for example, like the education award right now, the education award, and I don't want to knock it. I think it is a great benefit to have and it's wonderful. I used mine for higher education. Great. However, if you look comparatively, what the educational benefits were offered for military folks coming back after World War II, essentially they could get 100% of their schooling paid for, in addition have living stipends and other things. Right now, the education award probably would account for maybe 25% of a 4-year degree, if you're going to yes, and it's taxed, which is a very easy fix that I discuss in there. If Congress wants to do a little thing, that can be fixed right there. So increasing that amount. So folks, if you serve 1 year of doing civilian service in some respect, it would equate to about $25,000. So you would be able to pursue an associate's degree. If you do 2 years, you would likely be able to pursue a state school 4-year education. So to me, that is where let's really make the benefit worth it for these young adults and get them something tangible on the other side, as opposed to here's a bit of money, very helpful, but you're still an additional $20,000 for someone is still a lot of money, even if it's loans that you're paying off over time, still a big obstacle for a lot of folks. And then the other thing is unemployment benefits. So for folks who have just finished a year of service, similar to what they did during COVID, where they had an additional benefit offered on to the state's unemployment benefits, adding an additional benefit for former Corps members when they come back, so they don't have to jump in the very first job that is offered to them that might not be what they want to pursue, but maybe gives them 6 months to a year of flexibility to have a little bit to work with to then say, great, I really loved doing environmental work in NCCC, but when I move home, I got to start paying bills right away. And so I can't just spend time finding a great environmental job. I got to go down to the local retail store, restaurant, go back to my old job that I had before. This would give them some flexibility to get on their feet and figure out next steps. So those are a couple of the ideas in there that would support this system of growth for young young adults who've just given service to then enter back into the economy in a really productive manner.
So when you explain it like that, I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. We'll jump in the car. I'm in the
Yeah.
DC area. We'll just
Yeah.
to DC and knock on the Capitol and be like, excuse me, can we have a conversation? It makes so much sense. Yeah. To me, I feel like the incentive piece is super intriguing.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of business podcasts.
Uh-huh.
And I have a sales background. So I'm always like, you want to sell new products to your current customers. And to me, I feel like this is like a membership level opportunity for national service, or I like how you said civilian service. And these are the things that you're going to get, the incentives. And I know when we first talked, I was hearing you say, make national service required. And maybe that's in there, but I also feel like I told you, I feel a certain side of way about that. We can go there if we want to, but we're actually, I feel like we really put some teeth into what people get for serving would make a difference, right? And you can still have that transformative experience, if not maybe even more, because on the other side of this service, you're actually getting something that's going to make a difference. I mean, my education award was a drop in the bucket, right? But the majority of members probably never use their education award or really don't know how to leverage $7,000, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really, what I try to lay out here too is understanding that obviously I'm in law school. I'm a big believer in higher education, but again, that pathway is not for everybody. And so looking at post World War II America, the largest expansion of the middle class and the biggest economic boom we've had was post World War II, because you had all these people able to get into the housing market and start creating generational wealth. And so to me, and that was because they had low to no interest loans, VA loans. To me, that is an opportunity where let's start creating some of those opportunities for our civilian service members as well. So you're someone, you want to do a year of service, you want to do 2 years of service, that's great. But you're like, I already have a degree, maybe it was paid for, whatever it may be, or I just don't want to do higher education, which is totally fine and great too. But let's get you a benefit from the service you provided. And in the long run, I truly believe this expansion will really help to boost up the next generation and provide them a lot of economic opportunities that right now they're very concerned that they don't have, of being able to enter the housing market.
And I think one of the things that you bring up here too, that I just heard with this little snippet, is that we need to meet everybody where they're at. And when it comes to polarization, we've got conservatives that are really focused on being fiscally responsible. That's their thing. And then we have the super leftists, I don't even know what they're called, that want to support communities and everybody in communities and equality and diversity and all that stuff. And you can meet each faction of where they're at. This is good for our economy, which means it's going to be fiscally responsible. And these folks are going to go out to the community and they're going to use their mirror neurons to connect, to make change and transform and be a better citizen. Okay, you have me sold. So what do we need to do next?
That's right. Well, just start calling your representatives. So, like I said, I don't, especially in the political times we're in right now, regardless of where you are, Congress is just not doing a whole lot. And so something like this will take a lot of movement and pressure. And so I feel like I'm an idealist, but also pragmatist, in that my hope is that if the opportunity presents itself, someone somewhere will look at this and say, hey, maybe this is something big and bold we can do to help future generations and ultimately help America as a whole to really improve things. So that's my hope with this.
So if people are like, all right, I got to connect with this Griff guy, we need to have some more conversations. And I think I talked to you before we hit recording earlier this month. There's a group of people that I'd love to introduce you to, but how could people connect with you to be thought partners on this?
Absolutely. I am on LinkedIn. Anybody, please feel free to reach out to me, especially if you have AmeriCorps alum in your bio. I get all kinds of different requests. And even if I don't know a person, if I see AmeriCorps alum, I'm like, yep, connect. So please reach out to me. I'm not on other social media, but just LinkedIn. So that's where you can find me. But really, I just want to keep us thinking and focusing on how we can expand civilian service in whatever way possible. There's big, bold ideas out there. I know you hinted on like mandatory service, but anything from the littlest idea to the biggest, I would love to talk to folks. Really, what this is all about is sharing ideas so that we can sharpen our skill set, sharpen our ideas so that they get even better and better. I have a link to my law review comment where you can take a look and actually read what I proposed. And please come back with critiques and where you're like, this wouldn't work for this reason. If I just do have a few minutes, I just want to share real quickly. So as a law student, I was able to attend a model constitutional convention, which for folks that don't know, the Constitution has not been amended since the 70s. And a lot of folks think that we, at least in the near future, will not amend the Constitution because it takes I believe it's 75 states to ratify an amendment to the Constitution. So because of our polarization, or excuse me, not 75% of the states. Yeah, no, I added 25 states in there. Yeah, no. So whatever, 33 states to ratify an amendment to the Constitution. And a lot of people don't think that will happen. Arizona State, in addition to the National Constitution Center, put on a model constitutional convention. And there my committee, we put forward mandatory national service, which I know is highly debated and controversial, but it was really cool to see the process of young adults, many who are younger than me. For those who are just listening, I have a little gray in my beard, so I'm a little older, but hashing out these ideas and really fine tuning an amendment that made it out of committee and I think we got about 22 or so votes on the floor. So we didn't ratify it. It didn't pass, but there was momentum behind it. And so to me, that's what this is all about. Sharing ideas, getting feedback, critiquing so that we can keep building and improving national civilian service moving forward.
Well, and I think that's such a good example of how our democracy is supposed to work, right? It's about engaging with different ideas and different perspectives and different experiences. I think you're doing a great thing. We'll see if we can find some momentum with this and at least people can get a different perspective, and organizations that are doing advocacy on the ground might be really interested in looking at some of the points that you propose. And I'm just grateful that you reached out and that you wanted to be on this podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate you hosting me. This is great.
Yeah. As we wrap, is there anything else that you want to share and you want the listeners to know?
I think the only thing I would say, and I would just be remiss without saying this, as you mentioned, I don't want to speak to whether anyone agrees or disagrees with any actions by any administrations or anything like that. But I would just want to say that as you can see, I'm wearing my Thank a Civil Servant sweatshirt. I really just want to put forward that there's a lot of talk, and sometimes I've seen degrading speak about public servants and those who commit their life in federal service broadly. And so I would just like to say that I think for those who are in public service, I want to say thank you to you. You're doing tremendous work. I know it's not always easy, but please keep it up. And for those of you who are maybe young in your careers and thinking about it and having trepidation because of some of the rhetoric that's used, public service is a noble cause and you should pursue it. And it's really one of the most wonderful things that I think our country offers is lots of public service opportunities. So that is really all I also wanted to say.
That's wonderful. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Griff, for being a guest on the podcast. And for all of you all out there, find your purpose, follow your passion, and just stay true to yourself. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nikki.